The drone's camera light cut through 40 meters of absolute darkness, and what it illuminated at the bottom of that shaft had the entire research team frozen in silence. No one spoke, no one moved. The feed was live, projected onto a laptop screen propped against a folding table at the edge of the jungle, and every person watching it understood, without needing to say it out loud, that they were looking at something that should not exist. Not here. Not at this depth, not sealed behind a stone door that carbon analysis would later confirm had not been opened in over 1,000 years. Nobody was prepared for this, not the engineers who built the drone, not the archaeologists who authorized the descent, and certainly not the academic institutions that would spend the next several months trying, desperately, to explain it away. The temple has no official name on any tourist map, no visitor path leading to it, and until 18 months ago, most archaeologists weren't even sure it existed. It sits in a remote corridor of the Yucatan Peninsula, not far from sites tourists visit every year, but separated from them by dense jungle, restricted land access, and what one researcher described as a suspicious lack of official interest. The structure was first flagged in 2019 by a LiDAR aerial survey. That's light detection and ranging technology, the same laser mapping method that recently exposed entire hidden cities beneath the Guatemalan canopy. The scan showed the unmistakable geometric signature of a man-made pyramid, partially collapsed on the surface, but with subsurface readings suggesting chambers intact far below ground level. A local archaeological team submitted a formal excavation request. It was delayed, resubmitted, delayed again. By 2022, a small independent research group, working with academic observers but without major institutional funding, decided to attempt something different. Instead of digging down, they would send something small enough to fit through the existing fractures in the sealed entrance stone. They would send a drone, but what they expected to find was a standard burial chamber, perhaps some ceremonial pottery, maybe deteriorated wall carvings. What they found at 40 meters, that was something else entirely. To understand why that depth matters, why 40 meters underground inside a Mayan structure is so extraordinary, you need to understand something about how the Maya related to the earth beneath their feet. For most ancient civilizations, underground meant burial, storage, refuge. But for the Maya, the underground was a living cosmological realm. They called it Xibalba, the place of fear, a layered underworld governed by death gods, accessible through caves, cenotes, and deliberately constructed subterranean passages. This wasn't mythology in the way we casually use that word. To the Maya, Xibalba was as real as the sky above them. Archaeological evidence confirms this belief was architectural. At Chichen Itza, a network of underwater caves runs directly beneath the main pyramid, the famous El Castillo, suggesting the pyramid was intentionally positioned over a cenote, aligning the living world with the underworld below. At Palenque, the tomb of the great ruler Kainich Janab Pakal was placed at the end of a descending staircase designed to represent the journey into Xibalba. At Gibanche, researchers found a series of underground chambers used for ritualistic purposes that mainstream archaeology is still working to fully understand. The deeper a chamber, the more sacred its purpose. Depth was not a practical consideration. It was a theological statement. Dr. Alejandro Morales Vega, a specialist in Mayan religious architecture at the Universidad Autónoma de Yucatán, who has studied subsurface ceremonial sites for over 2 decades, has written extensively on what he calls the deliberate inaccessibility principle. His argument is precise and troubling in equal measure. He states, and I am quoting directly, "The Maya did not seal chambers to protect objects from human interference. They sealed them to protect humans from what was inside." Let that settle for a moment. One of the leading voices in Mayan architectural studies is suggesting that certain underground spaces were considered dangerous, not symbolically, but in a way that required permanent physical sealing, which makes what the drone captured at exactly 40 meters almost impossible to explain. At exactly 40.3 meters below the sealed entrance stone, the drone's sensors picked up a cavity that no geological survey had ever detected. The descent itself took nearly 11 minutes. The passage was narrow, partially blocked by root systems and fallen debris, but the drone's design allowed it to navigate the obstruction. When it entered the chamber, the team's first reaction was confusion. The space was larger than the external structure suggested was possible, significantly larger. Rough estimates from the drone's ranging sensors indicated a chamber approximately 18 meters wide and 9 meters tall. That's roughly the interior volume of a mid-sized concert hall, buried silently beneath a jungle no one had properly excavated. The walls were covered. Not eroded, not collapsed. Covered, deliberately and densely, with carvings and painted glyphs that had survived in extraordinary condition due to the chamber's near-perfect humidity seal. But here's where the team's excitement shifted into something more complicated. The iconography was wrong. Not wrong in the sense of damaged or misinterpreted. Wrong in the sense that it did not match any known period of Mayan artistic tradition. The glyphs bore structural similarities to early pre-classic Mayan script, dating potentially to 1000 BCE or earlier, but they were combined with symbolic elements that archaeologists associate with the terminal classic period, roughly 800 to 1000 CE. Two styles, separated by nearly 2,000 years of artistic evolution, appearing together in one room with no transitional phase between them. And at the center of the chamber floor, resting on a raised stone platform, was an object that the team initially mistook for a natural mineral formation. It was not. It was carved. Deliberately, precisely, and in a style that matched nothing in the existing Mayan archaeological record. Dr. Valentina Cruz, a Mesoamerican epigrapher at the Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, who has spent 19 years decoding Mayan glyphs across 14 sites, looked at the photographs from that chamber and said something that stopped the room cold. Her words, shared in a recorded academic panel in late 2024. The glyph combinations on that wall describe a ritual that, according to our understanding of Mayan cosmological sequencing, should not have been known to the civilization at the time this chamber was constructed. Either our dating is catastrophically wrong, or someone was recording knowledge they had no business possessing. Catastrophically wrong. Those are not words academics use lightly. The object at the center of the chamber was sent for analysis after the drone captured high-resolution imagery sufficient for preliminary study. Spectrographic comparison, a technique that matches material composition against known geological and man-made substance databases, suggested the carved object was made from a stone type not native to the Yucatan Peninsula, not transported from a neighboring region, not from anywhere in Mesoamerica. The closest geological match, according to two independent material analysts, was a mineral composition found primarily in regions of what is now the southwestern United States, over 2,000 kilometers away. Scientists expected a local artifact, but what they found implied a connection, a trade route, a migration, a contact point that no existing archaeological model accounts for. The skeptics pushed back immediately. Dr. Harold Fenwick of the University of Edinburgh called the material analysis preliminary and the conclusions overreached. And he may be right, but even he acknowledged in the same statement that the glyph combinations were, quote, genuinely anomalous and deserving of serious study. Here's something that should bother you. A discovery of this magnitude, if verified, would be among the most significant archaeological finds of the 21st century, and yet you likely heard nothing about it until right now. No major news outlet covered the initial findings. The academic papers submitted by the research team in early 2024 went through 3 rounds of peer review, each time returned with requests for additional verification, which the team argues is standard for extraordinary claims, but which independent observers note has taken considerably longer than comparable submissions. Access to the physical site has been formally restricted by regional authorities, citing structural instability. Independent researchers who have attempted to visit have been turned away. The drone footage itself, the original, unedited files, has not been made publicly available. Only still images and a heavily compressed video excerpt have circulated. Why? That is a question being asked with increasing urgency by researchers in the archaeoacoustics and alternative archaeology communities. The official answer is preservation and procedural protocol. But the pattern, delayed access, suppressed publication, restricted footage, is one that historians of archaeological discovery will recognize. It is not unique to this site. It has happened before at other locations, when findings threatened to complicate the accepted narrative of how and when complex civilization developed in the Americas. Someone may not want this story told at full volume, and when you understand what the final piece of footage revealed, it becomes clear why. But none of that, not the chamber, not the artifacts, not the contradicted timeline, none of it is the most disturbing part of what the drone found. In the final minutes of its battery life, before the team began the retrieval process, the drone drifted to the far wall of the chamber, the wall directly opposite the entrance passage. And there, partially obscured by a collapsed section of ceiling stone, was a second door. Sealed, identical in construction to the entrance above, the one that had not been opened in over 1,000 years. But this door was different in one specific, inexplicable detail. The ceiling stone bore markings on the outside, markings that the glyph analysts, upon review, identified not as Mayan in origin, but as belonging to a writing system that archaeology has not yet fully classified. A system with partial similarities to proto-writing found at sites in, and this is the part that has not been explained, South America, a continent separated from the Yucatan by the full breadth of Central America. Dr. Cruz, when shown this portion of the footage, went silent for a long moment before responding. Then she said simply, "That door should not be there, and whatever is behind it, we may not be ready for. Nobody has opened it yet. The equipment required for safe extraction has been requested. The permits are still pending." So I'll leave you with the question that hasn't left me since I first studied this footage. Is this a missing link? Proof of contact between civilizations that history insists never met? Is it a chamber the Maya themselves feared enough to seal twice? Or is there a simpler explanation hiding somewhere in the evidence that trained eyes have somehow missed? Leave your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if this investigation reached somewhere deep in your curiosity, you will not want to miss what I found about the second sealed site identified in that same LiDAR survey. That story is coming very soon. Because the truth is far stranger than anyone imagines.